Hello again. I'm Tripp Rogers. He's Mike Sheck, the Hall of Famer. We are the Fantasy Sultans. It's week 14 in the NFL. It is another bye-magddon. We've got
Oh
six
yeah.
teams on bye, and it is causing. Listen, there is not one team that is not affected by this bye because you've got some really good teams that are on the bye this week. Michael, how are you doing? Let's talk about before we go to week 14, let's talk week 13, and let's talk about the fantasy performances of week 13.
Well, I think the biggest story out of week 13 was the Christian McCaffrey injury. I mean, that is huge from a perspective of anybody who had him as the number one pick, or even if you picked him two, wherever you picked him. He has not been the player that you wanted this year. And of course, Jordan Mason going to IR too. So, it's a PCL injury for McCaffrey. He suffered it on Sunday Night Football. Mason has an ankle injury. They're both done from a fantasy football perspective for the season. If somehow the 49ers make the playoffs, maybe Mason returns, but that's a big if with the 49ers because they're just struggling with injuries all across the board, and they are certainly not the team they were last season. And now we have to think about how much are we going to trust Christian McCaffrey moving forward. First, we got to figure out how he recovers from this injury, because if you recall, with the Achilles tendonitis, there was talks about him maybe not even playing a down in the NFL anymore. So, we don't know what's going to happen if he does return to the field. Where do we put him? I don't know that he's a number one overall pick anymore. I mean, he's a household name and everybody's going to know him for his performances when he's healthy. But everybody's going to have to start realizing that he is injury prone. He's had multiple injuries over the past few seasons. And, last year was an exception, so to speak, because he did well for the 49ers. But, I think it just is going to boil down to where are you going to take him moving forward? Are you going to take him as a top 5 pick? Is he going to be somewhere in the first round, or maybe he'll slip to the second or third? I mean, this is huge.
Our buddy Mac did not listen to us. We said, do not
Yeah.
take Christian McCaffrey. Didn't listen to us. As a
I
result,
actually had him ranked. Yeah, I actually had him ranked higher than you. I think you had him around like 5. I think.
no, I want to say it was 4 or 5. You're right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was not, listen, I was not on the Christian McCaffrey bandwagon because I didn't like this 49ers offense. And even though I have Brock Purdy and I had him as my quarterback most of the year, I'm questioning whether or not I really want Brock Purdy in the lineup, especially we're hitting the playoffs, because I'm not sure he can do it. And it's just you have the injuries that they've had to their wide receivers and now both running backs. Isaac Orendo, not bad. I'm sure he'll be on one of our lists this week as an import because he's a guy you want to get because he's basically the only option for the 49ers at this point. And he's a guy who did sub before, but we said get him off the list because you had McCaffrey coming back and you had Jordan Mason. Well, now both of them get wiped out. I think the other thing that we need to talk about from week 12 is what do you do with any Jaguar player? Because that hit on Trevor Lawrence was bad. And I don't know, you trust Mac Jones? I mean, I'm thinking sell high on Tanks Bigsby here at this point. I don't think you want to go with anybody in Jacksonville. I mean, they're even saying temper your expectations from Brian Robinson because he's not going to do well either. I mean, the wide receiving core, this is Mac Jones. So, that hurts again, and you're in the playoff time, although Trevor Lawrence is not, I don't think he was even top. Was he top 10? I don't think he was.
No.
I don't think he was, but that was a horrific hit, by the way. Gotta mention that. That was just bad. And the suspension was definitely deserving, although it's funny, the internet wins on this one because the person who hands out the suspensions is John Runyon, who was the former congressman from New Jersey, the former Philadelphia Eagle. And they always show the play where he decked a 49er. And this is the guy who's handing out punishment for late hits. There's something in there. I don't know what. All right. First of all, let's take a look. These are the teams that are on bye this week: Baltimore, Denver, Houston, Indianapolis, New England, and Washington. Now, just at quick glance here, Jaden Daniels for Washington, Anthony Richardson for Indianapolis, Houston, C.J. Stroud, Denver, Bo Nix, and Baltimore, well, King Henry,
Yep.
and Lamar Jackson. That's just off the top of my head. But the one thing is, though, this bye could help them because you're talking about one, two, three, four teams that are in the hunt for the playoffs out of six. So this late bye could help them, especially given the fact that you have so many injuries at this time of the year. Maybe that week off could play into their hands.
You mean you're not mentioning Justin Tucker?
No, I didn't mention Justin Tucker. Oh
No,
man,
no.
that
Yeah.
that was and it was funny because on Hard Knocks they used the audio and you can hear it doink, you can hear it hit the upright,
Yeah.
and it was loud and clear, and it's like, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah. Well, all right. We'll talk. Listen, we'll talk about that because I've got an import that I'm going to mention, which I think may surprise you. Maybe not. I don't know. But again, you're around playoff time. You don't need two of certain things. We'll get into that. But the Hall of Famer, as he always does, leads off our import exports.
And no exports this week. I'm going to go all imports as we wrap up the last week of the regular season. I'm going to start with a quarterback because you won't have Bo Nix, Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, or C.J. Stroud, but you do have Bryce Young in Carolina. He was benched earlier this season in favor of Andy Dalton, and when Dalton got injured, Young reclaimed the starting job. Suddenly, past few games, he's looking like a franchise quarterback. He had his best 298 yards, one touchdown last week. Also ran one against the Bucks. Now, he's not going to put up the numbers like, Lamar Jackson's going to, CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels, but he's going to be efficient enough, and he has not turned the ball over in 2 games. All right, let's go to the running backs. And I have a pair for you. First, we're going to start with Alexander Madison in Las Vegas. Now, he was sidelined from an ankle injury for the past 2 games, returned to limited action last week. Looks like he's going to be available this week against Tampa Bay. Prior to injury, he played about 60% of the snaps. He averages 20.3 touches per game from week 5 to 8. He's a player that you want to pick up. Another player you want to pick up running back wise, Carolina's Jonathan Brooks. Now, last week on this very podcast trip, you did export him, and for a good reason. I mean, he was out for 10 games, didn't do much against the Chiefs, but last week his usage increased, 9 touches, just below 50% roster percentage slip, and, I think he's worth taking a flyer once again as we head into the playoffs. Tough matchup this week against the Eagles defense, but he does have games against Dallas, Arizona, and Tampa Bay upcoming, and those are all playoff games where if you need him in the playoffs, he might be able to help you out here and there, so he might be a player that you want to pick up. I'll shift to wide receiver now, and Parker Washington from Jacksonville. Now, you did mention Mac Jones. Who do you trust? Well, Parker Washington, little chemistry going on there with Mac Jones after Trevor Lawrence got injured. Those two had a connection. 6 passes that were caught for 103 yards and a touchdown. Longest reception of 30 yards. Jacksonville has difficult defensive matchups against Tennessee and the New York Jets. But if Jones is in the lineup, somebody's got to throw him the ball to Parker Washington. So I just think that this is an option that you definitely want to do, and Parker Washington could be the guy. Let's talk about a kicker. And, you may need a kicker on bye week. Blake Groupie in New Orleans is somebody that you want to pick up. 2 52-yard field goals he hit last week against the Rams, made multiple field goals in 4 of his last 5 games. This week, the Saints play the Giants, and the Giants have given up 26 or more points in 5 of their last 6 games. So I think Groupie is going to get a lot of action.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to start with the defense and a defense that is available in a lot of leagues. The New Orleans defense, they're playing the Giants this week. You need a streaming defense? That's what I would pick up. You were talking about kickers. Now, Mike, this is a move that I'm making thinking down the road. Harrison Butker set to come back off IR next week for Kansas City. Butker was money before he got injured. And now Kansas City is on their second kicker, because actually third kicker, because they brought somebody in. He got injured. Spencer Schrader came in. He's injured. Matthew Wright's kicking. I just, again, Butker comes back next week. Here's your chance. He's available because most people dropped him, didn't think he'd be back. He's available in most leagues. I would say get him this week. Again, you can't use him this week, but he's due to come off IR next week, and chances are he is going to kick for Kansas City, where they signed him a big contract extension. So Harrison Butker is a guy who probably could help you in the long run. All right, running back. I said we would talk. One of us would say it. I'll say it. Isaac Guerrero in San Francisco. I'm not in love with the San Francisco offense, and I said that before. But Guerrero is the last, or the next man up, or the last man standing, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And he's shown some flashes, and he did on Sunday night against Buffalo. Listen, that game was an element game. I mean, I would have been surprised if somebody did not come out with an injury, because that was just nasty conditions. And unfortunately, the 49ers got burned. And again, I go back to what we said at the beginning of the year. Not loving the 49ers, Super Bowl hangover. I just don't believe in this team. And as we have seen, you have the injuries. It's not working. But Guerrero is a guy who can help you. Again, if you need running back help, I mean, there's not a lot you can find. So if you need somebody to shore up your team, again, even to put on bench, and at this time of the year, the move you make is to keep somebody away from your guy. Like, you stash him on the bench, even though you may not need him. You put him on the bench so nobody else can get them. That could be the difference in your game. So Isaac Guerrero is somebody you'd get. All right, how about I give you a wide receiver, somebody to pick up. And Mike, I'm going to do this again. We've talked about him on and off all year. I watched a lot of that Carolina-Tampa Bay game on Sunday, and I came away very impressed. Number one, you said Bryce Young, and I agree with you. Bryce Young, certainly different than last year. But, he works with Adam Thielen. Thielen, another guy who is available. People have lost faith in him. Of course, he was injured for a bit. Adam Thielen, hey, if he's available in your league, got to grab him. He is available in some leagues. He could be the wide receiver difference you need, especially, and again, you don't know when injuries are going to happen. So sometimes you pick up somebody, you put them on the bench, you never know when you're going to use them. And, that's a good point. Tight end, I want to bring up, if you're looking for somebody, and I think he is available in some leagues, you need maybe a tight end. Although, listen, if you've got Trey McBride, you got money, folks. If you got Jonnu Smith, you got money, folks. Oh, I have them on one team, both of them. I'm swimming in riches, baby. Tucker Kraft for Green Bay is a guy you can pick up. He is not on bye this week. And again, if you have a tight end that's on bye, this would be your replacement for you. Import, exports. Mike, I think it's kind of interesting. And we talked about this. We do want to address it. You got 6 teams on bye. It's week 14. And you can count yourself lucky if you're in the playoffs this week and you got that first round bye, because money. It's money, because you're not worried about that. And that's what happened in the one league we're in, the Best Buy league we're in. I was number 1. I lost last week. I got Ninjoku'd on Monday night. Ninjoku, did me in. But I'm the number 2 seed, so I still get a bye. So it's great. I'm not complaining. I got nothing to worry about in that league. Now, I got 2 other games I got to worry about, but still, you're not, the pressure's not on. And the bye week is also, like I said, even though I have a bye week, I'm still making moves. I still got Harrison Butker because I'm looking ahead to the playoffs. Now, I'm not saying carry 2 kickers, not saying carry 2 defenses, not saying carry 2 quarterbacks. You only need 1 quarterback, really. unless you're in a two quarterback league, which I am also in. But I got to tell you, it's nice to not have to think about it. Unfortunately, though, like I said, next week, do or die. You win, keep going. Lose, goodbye. Thank you. Next.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't like about the playoffs starting this week is, you mentioned it, the six teams that are on a bye. I think it's very difficult to navigate. I mean, it's kind of early to start playoffs. Most leagues don't start their playoffs until next week. And then they're going to go 15, 16, 17. Now, there are very few leagues who actually go until week 15 and then do 16, 17, 18. And I don't even like going to 18 because you've got the playoff teams who are in the playoffs. They're going to be resting players. And then you got to figure out what players you're going to be using. So I don't like having a week 18 as your championship. Very few leagues do it. I think 17 is a pretty popular number to wrap up the season fantasy overall. But I don't like the fact that playoffs are starting this week in some leagues because I think it puts teams at an unfair advantage. I mean, yeah, for you, I think it's great because you get that bye week. You're sitting comfortable, but for everybody else, not really. I mean, they've got to struggle because the bye weeks are done after this week.
The other thing I want to mention real quick, and we talk about this fantasy wise every year. You got to know your rules. You got to know what's going on. You've got to have some awareness too. And the problem is when you get to this point of the season, and as we found out, Yahoo, you cannot block people from making waiver claims. And the thing that bothered me, there's one league we're in. It is a rodent league. That's all I'll say. I don't want to give them any publicity because that's the most frustrating league we've ever been in. But they allow people to make waiver claims. Mm-hmm. And you're playing for a championship, and somebody who's been eliminated 3 weeks before, makes a waiver claim. And I'm like, that's wrong. And you should be aware where you are. If you're in the playoffs, okay, that's good. But if you're not, be nice. Don't make a waiver claim. Even though it says you've got a game in the consolation bracket, no one cares. You're not getting paid for the consolation bracket. And you should be aware. And unfortunately, it's come up in the Best Buy League. It has come up that we've got some of the teams that are in the consolation. They've made waiver claims. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We don't do that.
No,
we know better. It was funny because I texted the league commissioner and I said, my fellow fantasy Sultan, the Hall of Famer, knows not to make any claims because he's not in the playoffs. He's also, as has been pointed out to me on a couple of occasions, he's going to be getting the flag this year. You're going to be getting the flag there, buddy. And you're going to put it up on the wall behind you.
Yes.
When we do a show.
Yep. I will be putting it up. That's right. That's right. I will be putting it up, but I will say two other leagues, just saying, might be in the playoffs. Just saying.
There you go.
Maybe we'll see. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. But
track record. Hey, track record. It's funny that game I got Njoku'd on. That's the first fantasy loss I've had in 3 weeks. I've won 3 games a week for the last 3 weeks, except for that game. I'm like, well, that's a nice run. Of course, I want it to continue. I don't want it to end, but what can I say? Hey, Mike, the other thing we forgot to talk about last week, and I got to make sure we say something. We are also on the radio on Sundays at noon with Sunday with the Fantasy Sultans. Mike, tell them where you can listen to us.
Yeah, you can listen to us on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey, Fox Sports Radio Jersey Shore, and foxsportsradionewjersey.com. We are on 1450 AM in Central Jersey, as well as 93.5 FM. And then we're on 100.1 HD3 and 95.9 HD3 at the Jersey Shore. And as always, at foxsportsradionewjersey.com.
Of course, the podcast drops on Thursday. You can hear this on Sunday. And of course, if you've got a question, comment, whatever, a strategy question, we'd be happy to help you. It's fantasysultans@gmail.com. Listen to my other podcast, Tripp's Take, which drops also Thursday morning. You can find it the same places you can find this podcast, Spotify for podcasters, and YouTube. Just search for Tripp's Take. If you like the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, listen to WTRSradio.com, online, we give you, and we got the Christmas music sprinkled in. That's we're doing the holiday thing. We say Merry Christmas here. It's not Happy Holidays. And by the way, I just realized we are 2 weeks away from Fantasy Festivus.
That's right.
We
We are getting
live
very
the
excited.
Fantasy Festivus. We'll have
We'll
the
be getting
aluminum
the
pole. We got the
Yep.
aluminum pole in the studio. We got it out of the crawl space. We'll have the airing of fantasy grievances and feats of strength. Embrace your heritage, Mike. Embrace your heritage.
I hate Festivus.
Seinfeld. Oh, Seinfeld is so good. Again, we're here, week 14 again, another bye-magddon, but we're here to help you. We will get you to the championship. Before you know it, it'll be playoff time, and we only got a couple of weeks left in the season because when fantasy season usually ends at the end of the regular season. So what can I say? But we'll help you. We'll help you get there. We're going to give you some tips. We're going to tell you what to do. We'll give you advice. Did it work for Mac this year? Well, he's not in last place, so I guess he credits us with listening to us. He still made that horrendous pick of picking Christian McCaffrey first, but we won't go into that. We'll let that go.
I think I need to listen to the podcast some more.
He is the Hall of Famer Mike Scheck. I am Tripp Rogers. Together we are the Fantasy Sultans.
And you are not.